Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. This is episode 2 of the podcast, The Forward. It's been a while since the last one, a last recording and a last posting. But we're here in the Muslim world. Myself, Matthew Locke, and I have my guest, Marcus, who's an American from Indiana. He's also teaching out here in the Middle East. And we're here to talk about Trump and the upcoming election. So Marcus, if you could introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll get on to the main talking points.
Yeah, Marcus, and I'm here teaching English in the Middle East. This is my second year being out here, and I'm in the Muslim world as a non-Muslim, but so far it's been great, love it. I've been to a lot of different places. I was able to travel a lot, and I enjoy it. Great, very nice people, and so it's been an interesting experience. So, but Trump, most of the people that I talk to say that Trump is not friendly to Muslims, but I'm interested in knowing why you like. I think you're the only Muslim that I know that actually likes Trump.
Yeah, well,
I think that's very interesting.
Well, I know other Muslims who like Trump as well. I do know other ones who live out in the UK and the United States, but I think the primary reason, number one reason, is simply for the good of the Middle East. For the good of the Middle East, because her policies, that other devil woman, it's quite clear now that everyone knows now that she has been supporting and backing ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations in Syria and Iraq and in Libya, and the Muslim Brotherhood as well in Egypt, which is why, for example, General Sisi, who's the leader of Egypt, when he visited the United Nations recently, he expressed support for Trump because he knows that America first is going to mean that the American government is not going to get involved in unnecessary wars, and therefore the Muslim world and the Arab world, they'll be able to resolve their problems by themselves without all this meddling and interfering. So that's the primary reason I'm looking at Trump. And also in recent developments, it's quite obvious that if Hillary comes to power, we could be looking at a serious war between the United States and Russia, which could be a nuclear war.
Yeah. So
whether you're Muslim or not, I'm not too keen on glowing green for 1,000 years and being visible from Alpha Centauri. I don't know about anyone else. I'm just speaking on my behalf, and I'm not too keen on that idea.
I had a student actually 2 days ago. I was talking to a student, and his mother lived in America for a while. Actually, she got a PhD from Harvard in something. I think she works at Aramco now. But anyway, so he speaks pretty good English. I was talking to him, and I asked him about it. I said, he asked me about the elections and stuff. But so I asked him what his opinion was, and he says he thinks that if Hillary gets elected, then everything will pretty much stay the same. We'll still be in the Middle East fighting and all this to kind of carry on what's going on right now. And everything, and economically, everything will basically kind of stay the same. But he said if Trump gets elected, then nobody really knows what's going to happen. So that was kind of like his synopsis of the election.
I think people don't follow. Again, you have to sort of step away from the mainstream media. You have to step away from CNN and BBC and whatnot, and you really have to listen to the candidates directly, which is what you can do now with the internet. You can go to a candidate's Twitter page, you can go to a candidate's website, and Trump himself, he made this clear in the second debate, and it's also on his website under his ISIS policy and then his immigration policy, is that there is no such thing now as a ban all Muslims policy. What it is now is an extreme vetting process. It's an extreme vetting process where we want to make sure that the people coming to the United States are not a threat in any way, shape, or form. And that's why I even saw someone on Gab, a guy who actually does work in border patrol, maybe works for ICE, and he said Trump is right in the fact that when it comes to Syrian refugees, we don't know who they are. We have no means of vetting them. We have no means of tracking their background. And the added problem of that, and this is something that what's her name? What she called Syrian girl on Twitter. She's a Syrian lady who comments on events, and she said that what's happens is if Western governments no longer recognize the Syrian government, the government of Bashar al-Assad, then you have actually no means of double-checking passports. Right? Anyone can show up with a fake Syrian passport. If you're not going to recognize that government in Damascus and contact them and say, is so-and-so a citizen of yours? Yeah. What's his background? You can't do it. So you have that problem with Syrian refugees. You have the same problem with Libyan refugees, Iraqi refugees, and if you look properly at Trump's policy, it makes perfect sense. I think it makes perfect sense, especially considering the fact that ISIS have openly said on numerous occasions that they would use refugee programs to infiltrate Europe, to infiltrate the United States. The fact that the attacks that took place in Brussels and in Paris and so forth, those people did get in as refugees in Greece. That's why you can look. I'll put the link below. You can look at the article I wrote called "Why Do They Support Trump," which was written a year ago now, but it explains this policy and the wisdom behind it.
So do you think that Muslims in the Middle East? So you have a lot of friends who are for Trump, but I mean, the majority of Muslims are probably going to be against him. Do you think, or what do you think about that?
No, from what I'm able to gather is there's this divide between, say, the Anglosphere Muslims, the Muslims who live out in the United States and maybe the United Kingdom, and then the Muslims who live out in the Muslim world. Muslims out in the U.S., in this case exactly in particular, they're going to be thinking about, okay, what is going to be more comfortable for us living in the United States, right? So that's why they would incline towards Hillary. It sounds kind of worldly, but whereas Muslims out in the Muslim world, whether it's Morocco, whether it's Syria, Libya, Iraq, they're thinking, no, if we're gonna get an American president who's just gonna back off, or better yet, is gonna side with Putin and get rid of ISIS, that's better. That's better. Yeah. That's better for us. That's why General Sisi is supporting Trump. That's why people like Syrian Girl are supporting Trump. Where they think because with Hillary Clinton, it's like even if we assume that Trump is an unknown, right? Even if we ignore his policies and assume he's an unknown, it's like with Hillary Clinton, we know exactly what we're going to get. We're going to get more of the same, if not worse. Whereas Trump is like an unknown. It's like, yeah, we'll take our chances with Trump.
Yeah, the General Sisi thing, I mean, I haven't even heard that on the media at all.
Yeah, that's on Breitbart. There's an article on Breitbart because when he came for the recent UN conference, he did go backstage and he spoke to both Trump and Hillary. He did it deliberately so that no one would think that he was supporting one candidate or the other. But in an exclusive interview with Breitbart News, he himself spoke, and then other people on his staff, and they said, listen, in Egypt, remember Egypt. Egypt is like the beating heart of the Muslim world, right? That's the intellectual capital. That's our university. I think he put some figure like maybe 70% of Egyptians would prefer to have Trump.
Really?
Yeah.
So there was an actual poll.
I don't think there's an actual poll. They're just saying that this is what they gather amongst the people because they know that people like Obama and Hillary Clinton have supported the Muslim Brotherhood. They were behind Mohammed Morsi, and the vast majority of the Egyptians can't stand the Brotherhood because they're ineffective. Yeah. They don't come up with anything meaningful.
Yeah. Actually, when I visited Egypt, I had this tour guide, and she was telling me that when the Brotherhood took over, I mean, it's a total disaster because these people, they knew how to protest and they knew how to win elections or whatever, but they didn't have a clue how to govern. Yeah, and there's so many infrastructural problems and all this stuff. And she said she was literally crying every day. And she was just talking about how horrible, and they only lasted a year.
Yeah, because one of the things, for example, one of the things they tried to do when they took power, when they came to power, Mohammed Morsi, is he tried to, he wanted to have the call to prayer, the adhan, made in the Parliament building. Like that was a big thing, but that's just symbolic. Like, why does the call to prayer need to be made in the Parliament building? Like, you have masajid, you have mosques outside in Cairo, all doing the call to prayer. You don't need to do one in your house or in another building. Yeah. It's completely senseless and pointless. But that's what they're worried about. But we know about these people. The Muslim Brotherhood and groups like them. We know about these people. They sit around talking about, we're going to get into power, and then we're going to kill the faggots, and then we're going to whip all the adulterers, and it's like, okay, dude, what are you going to do about literacy rates in the country? What are you going to do about potable drinking water? Yeah. What are you going to do to make sure people have proper sanitation? What are you going to do about these things? Well, that's for the government to sort out. Well, dude, you want to be the government.
Yeah.
So how is that going to work?
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, it just doesn't. As you can see, when they came to power, nothing actually materialized.
Yeah, I think you were telling. I think it was you, but somebody was telling me about how when the Islamic Brotherhood took over, like the I think in Egypt 95% of the population lives on 5% of the land. So water is an important thing. And the joke was that when the Islamic Brotherhood took over, they couldn't even. The ancient Romans with their aqueducts could figure out a way to bring in water, but in the 21st century, the Islamic Brotherhood couldn't even figure out how to.
Well, it's a problem about the Arab world. It's not just here. There was that show. It's called Khilafah that broadcast out of Jeddah. What's his name? Ahmed Shigiri. he did a program about that showing 1,000 years ago how Salahuddin al-Ayyubi in Cairo was able to bring water through viaducts and bring it to every Egyptian household. And now in large parts of the Muslim world, people are going to wells or there's water trucks. But again, that's a separate issue.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying that if Trump wins, would he be? So you say Egypt would like that. What about like Saudi Arabia and say like Israel? How that will play out?
I don't know. I'm guessing that other countries in the Middle East. It depends on the nature of the rulers, and it depends on. Maybe some of them will be disappointed because Trump is not the kind of politician who can be bought. You're right. He's not going to be influenced. He's not really going to care. But Israel, that is a hard one to comment on. It depends what the people in Israel want. Are they just do they just want peace and stability for the meantime? Because I think that's what Trump will bring. Do they really want, or are there more people in the Israeli government who want to see more of an expansionist policy? Do they want to see conflict with Bashar al-Assad and other Middle Eastern, other Arab rulers? I don't know. So,
yeah.
But I think for the people, I think the mass of the people, it's just, I think Trump would just come across as just like a breath of fresh air and just a suspension of the normal turmoil.
Yeah. What do you think it's going to do with Syria?
No, Syria. I think the Syrian policy would be to come to an agreement with Putin and Russia and just wipe out ISIS. That's what Trump has said. He's used more colorful language. He said we're going to bomb the out of them. And I don't think many people in Syria and other parts of the Muslim world would lament at that.
Yeah.
They are the scourge of the age. They are the Khawarij revival, and they need to be stamped out. And I don't think anyone who objects to that needs to question their morality and their sanity. Really.
Yeah. So, as a Muslim, Trump, he's not necessarily a real moral guy. I don't think he's that religious. I think he claims to be Presbyterian or something like that. But anyway, how do you justify supporting a guy that's not very religious?
Okay, well, I think 2 points. I can't say. It's hard to say supporter because it's more because again I'm not an American. I can't vote.
Yeah.
But it's realizing that what he brings is so much more positive than what someone like Hillary Clinton brings. And in terms of morality, again, our position as Muslims is even when you're looking at Muslim rulers is that we would rather have. It's in our own books of rulership. We would rather have a strong ruler who has moral flaws than a morally impeccable person who's actually a weak ruler.
Yeah.
Because he may be morally impeccable, but if he's a weak ruler, it's going to lead to chaos. Right?
Yeah.
So you'd rather have someone who's a strong ruler who can get things done, who can keep things under control, even if he has no moral flaws, and especially if those moral flaws tend to be what we would call, or what someone like Imam al-Ghazali would call, intransitive sins, right? And meaning a sin that doesn't really affect anyone else.
Oh, okay.
Right. So if we have someone who, drinks or fornicates behind closed doors, that doesn't affect everyone else.
Yeah.
That doesn't affect everyone else. So we don't have that understanding. of like, a ruler has to be like, a paragon of morality.
Right. So you could have bad character but be a good leader.
Yeah, a good leader, a good effective leader. Because again, another default position for the Muslims, again, and this is again a position of Al-Ghazali politically, is that anarchy is better than tyranny. Tyranny is better than anarchy. You'd rather have a situation, you might have an oppressive ruler, but at least under an oppressive ruler, things get done. Right, people can go to work, people can get food, people have some sort of stability. Whereas, like under anarchy, it's just like anything goes. There's no stability. There's looting. There's crime sprees, and people can't function in that kind of environment.
Yeah,
you can function under tyranny, and again, that's a principle that people need to think about. When a lot of Muslims, when they think about, let's overthrow these rulers, it's like, yeah, but what happens in that vacuum, right? Yeah. We've seen what happened in Libya when Gaddafi was removed. We've seen what happened in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was removed. And people like Hillary Clinton, and there are Muslims that are like, let's remove Bashar al-Assad. Well, what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah. Well, but what do you? It seems to me that, especially for Hillary Clinton, they want instability. That's the whole goal anyway. Right?
Yeah.
Because it benefits.
You create a refugee crisis, and then you get more Democratic voters. Yeah. But if you really want to look, you want to take it further. It looks like just like a giant satanic plan where Muslims are going to be forced to migrate to Europe, to Angela Merkel in Germany, or they're going to be forced to migrate to the United States, and then when they're there, they're going to be given benefits, and then they're going to become leftist voters. They'll vote for the leftist parties, the big government parties, because leftist parties in Europe and the Anglosphere, they can never win the argument. They don't have a convincing argument for their policies. Yeah. So they can never convince the electorate. So what do? They change the electorate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Who's a good Muslim leader who maybe has some bad character but was strong?
Well, like now? Historically, that would be someone like Abdul Malik bin Marwan. Right, Abdul Malik bin Marwan was I believe it was an Umayyad caliphate. Yeah. He's the one who built the Dome of the Rock, and made it like a searing, shining luster, like shining gold. Huh. Because he wanted it to be like a blinding effect. But he was someone who was like he was very harsh on the Muslims. But then he was also harsh on like other empires. He was harsh on towards like Christian Empire, the Persians, and so forth. But he's someone who was he was a tyrant, but he's someone who was effective. He got things done. He managed to clear up situations after natural disasters and so forth. So we have that throughout history. And again, if you look at Islamic history, we do have a lot of tyrants. We do have a lot of tyrants. More tyrants than great moral people like someone like Omar ibn Abdulaziz. But primarily, again, Muslims were looking at someone who can get stuff done, who will defend Muslim interests, who will defend the borders. Does that sound familiar? Right? And that's what we respect. We don't want to be led by a coward. We don't want to be led by someone who's weak in the knees. It's not good.
Yeah, I think that's. I know in America, well, especially with conservative evangelical voters. It's Trump's character is important, and Trump's kind of his lifestyle and especially his past. Well, actually in his present too. That's like a huge issue, and but I don't know. It's kind of interesting because I think things have changed because a president, in my opinion, you just have a job. You got to protect the borders, defend your rights. Or defend the rights of Americans or the citizens, and that's it. It's not he's not like a moral guide. Like I don't look to the president for inspiration. I don't look to the president to tell me how to live my life, what to do, so on and so forth. You just need to do those two things. In America, politicians are public servants, so they're below us, not above us. Yeah. But I don't know. I think a lot of evangelicals have a huge hang-up on this issue.
I would put 2 points in there. Number one, and this is put in. This is mentioned by Mike Cernovich in his book Mega Mindset. Is that like in terms of Trump's religiosity, Trump is actually a student and follower of the preacher Norman Peale,
Yeah.
who wrote the book The Power of Positive Thinking.
See, tons of conservative evangelicals have a problem with that.
Yeah.
You know the hell.
What's wrong with positive thinking?
Well, yeah. I mean, not thinking positively, but the whole like wealth gospel. Like if you follow the gospel, then you're gonna automatically get wealthy. But
yeah, but that is part of his religious background. That's what he follows. And I mean, a lot of this is actually coming from his own pastor. That's my first point. My second point is what's really, really interesting about Trump is the fact that he's 70 years old, right? Yeah. He's filthy rich, right? I mean, odd expression to use, filthy rich, but by his own accounts, he says he's worth something like $9 billion. Other people say, like Forbes will say, it's more like $4 billion or $3 billion.
Hillary says he's bankrupt.
Yeah, she's one to talk.
Yeah.
But the point is, he doesn't have to do this, right?
Yeah.
He has a wonderful life. He has a wonderful family. He's got loads of money. He's got beautiful houses everywhere. He could easily just retire and live out the rest of his days in opulent luxury.
Yeah.
But he's actually stepped forward because, like he said to Oprah Winfrey, I think way back in 1988, he said, I would never rule out running for the presidency, because if things got so bad, you just don't know. If things got really, really bad, I would just have to step in. So the fact that he's actually doing this would indicate that he's sort of like giving up any chance of a retirement, just saying, I need to do something about this. This is how bad it's gotten.
Yeah.
And also bearing in mind the fact that he couldn't have done this really earlier, because he also feels a sense of responsibility towards his company and all his employees and his shareholders and so forth. So he said that when he takes over, when he becomes the president, obviously his kids will take over. His kids are now old enough; they're all in their 30s, mid-30s.
Yeah.
They can run the company if and when he becomes president.
Yeah, I think that's one of the appeals of Trump too, is the fact that he's because people always say that he speaks the truth, and I mean he said a lot of things that maybe aren't quite factually correct and so on and so forth, but the thing about him is that most of his speeches he gets behind the podium. He's got his personal jet that says Trump on it behind him. He always wears his suits. I mean, he's never trying to
and a red power tie.
Yeah, and so he came out and just basically said, "Hey, I'm filthy rich," and so he's true about who he is.
Yeah,
whereas most politicians are not like that. So it has I don't forget who said it, but they said he's the blue collar billionaire.
Yeah,
and I think it's true because he speaks like he's a worker, even though he's not.
He's Ivy League educated. It's one of the things that Mike Cernovich put this in his book again, Mega Mindset. He said that Trump has these 4 qualities that make him so appealing. Number 1, he's a nationalist. He's not a globalist. That it's about America first. It's not about getting involved in the interests of other countries. So it's America first. It's American citizens first. It's the interests of the country first. Number 2, he's not ashamed to be a white person. He's not ashamed. He doesn't have that sense of white guilt, which is being pushed heavily in academia and in the media. 3rd, he's not ashamed to be a man. He's unapologetically masculine, which all ties into the 4th thing, which he doesn't, like you said, he doesn't care about political correctness. He's just very, very real. He doesn't pretend to be something he's not.
Yeah.
He's very, very real, very, very in your face, and he doesn't pretend to be anything else. And then on to further from that as well is that Trump, despite the fact of his wealth, like you say, he's the blue collar billionaire, is that he tries to keep his ear to the ground. So when he travels from city to city, he tries to actually talk to taxi drivers. He'll talk to bellhops. He'll talk to waiters. He'll talk to people because he wants to know what common people are thinking. And even before he ran this election campaign, he actually hired people to listen to talk radio for I think 2 years. Just to what are Americans talking about?
Yeah.
So he's not so many other politicians, they don't do that. They don't actually have this sort of direct contact with the people. They're relying on focus groups and think tanks and these kind of things.
Yeah.
They're not actually listening to the genuine concerns, and that's why he's spoken to so many people that have felt horribly neglected by their government. And one thing that really stands out is the fact that he meets families of people who have had relatives killed by illegal aliens.
Yeah.
Some illegal alien, some guy who's been deported 10 times, came back and shot the dude, shot someone's son in the head or raped and killed someone's daughter.
Yeah.
He's talking to these people, and they've been completely ignored over the years. Talking to ICE agents, talking to getting the first endorsement ever from like the NRA. Just people all up and down the country who've got major grievances with the government, and they've never been spoken to. They've never been acknowledged. They've never been recognized as having any sort of legitimate issue or problem.
Yeah, I think that's a main appeal. Like for me, at first, I wasn't necessarily a Trump supporter, but I like the fact that he was running in the primaries because he was changing the conversation and he was changing the narrative. His first thing was the illegal immigration, build the walls, and so forth. And for the first time, he was actually talking about it. And he forced people to start talking.
Yeah,
about
not just
it.
Comprehensive immigration reform.
Right.
Which is a Band-Aid term.
Yeah. And and especially bringing those people, he personalized it because the cameras are always on him. So he brought those people that were, and there were women. There were, one of them was a black father who lost his son, was shot by an illegal immigrant. So he was like personalizing it, and none of those people were ever on
mainstream media. They were on talk
mainstream
shows.
media at all. Yeah, I thought that was so. I like the fact that he was at least changing the conversation to more important issues. But over time, it was more like it's just the people that were attacking him were the people that I don't like. I don't like establishment Republicans. Obviously, I don't like the establishment, the media. Just all the people who were attacking him were the people I didn't like. So then I just slowly kind of started to like him.
Yeah, because you start realizing. I saw this aside from the issues that I mentioned, like as a Muslim, why I want Trump to win, for the good of the Middle East and the good of the world in a sense. We avoid a World War III with Russia. Is just you start realizing all these creepy, evil people are against him, right? Whether it's the media, the corporate America, Wall Street, big social media, the career politicians. All these creepy, slimy people hate him.
Yeah,
which must be a good thing.
Yeah.
And he's shown what he's shown because I had an argument. I had a discussion with someone on Gab recently about could Trump be is he an insider? Is he like this hired Pied Piper candidate? And my response was I don't think so because the positions he's putting out are positions he's held for years. You can actually go back and see interviews.
Yeah.
Going back to the 80s where he's talked about the bad trade deals,
Yeah.
where he's talked about illegal immigration, where he's talked about the importance of borders and these kind of things. But also the fact what he's done is so dangerous because he's actually made it very, very clear that all these corrupt people are one and the same, right?
Yeah.
The Republicans and the Democrats are one party. CNN, MSNBC, it's all one thing. Wall Street's all one thing. George Soros, Goldman Sachs, it's all one entity, and they're not on your side. They're not on the side of the average man. They're all against you. So really, after this, what I've managed to gather, just following the news, not following the news, but just following mostly like social media, is the fact that once this election's over, I don't think people like CNN or MSNBC, I don't think they'll ever regain their credibility. They're finished. And then on top of that, organizations like probably Facebook and Google, probably be a mass exodus from these kind of organizations, especially like Facebook. Mass exodus from Google, I don't know what that would look like, but Facebook, I think, there'll be a mass exodus.
What's the connection between, I was listening to a interview with Nigel Farage, and he feels like this whole Trump movement, is what he was calling it, is very similar to Brexit, the Brexit movement. So, what is the connection between what's going on in America and Brexit?
Okay, well, quick disclaimer: I am half English, so the way it's working is in with the EU and then also with NAFTA is we've got this sort of globalist experiment where we've had politicians who are looking at. And this is in my article that is on my blog, I'll put a link below, called The Globalists and the Nationalists. But you've got these politicians like the Clintons, like the Bushes, like Tony Blair, like David Cameron, Angela Merkel, the entire EU structure. These are people who want to set up some form of global governance, right? And as they've been moving towards this agenda, setting up a good example is setting up the EU, people in these countries, like Britain, for starters, and it's also becoming more apparent in places like Hungary, places like Germany to some extent, where people are realizing that, wait a second, our interests and our rights as British citizens are just being neglected and being trampled on in favor of a refugee from Lord knows where, or an Eastern European migrant or whatever. And it's not working. People are losing jobs, wages are being depressed, people are seeing their culture eroded, their heritage eroded. And no one deserves that. No one deserves to have another culture imposed upon them by force. Whether it's a Muslim culture or whatever, no one deserves it. And this is what I was talking about in my previous podcast. No one deserves that, and the result is going to be bitterness and resentment. So now what we're getting is this nationalist backlash, where people are like, you know what, forget it, and they're looking at their own rulers. And I've noticed this over the past couple of years. I noticed like British people. I can speak about British people. Maybe you can tell me about Americans, but British people, I've noticed over the past couple of years, and even more, have been looking at someone like Vladimir Putin, who's like clearly a Russian nationalist.
Yeah.
Right? He looks out for the interests of his own people.
Yeah.
And it's like Vladimir Putin is just like, he's like the Chuck Norris of the age. He's just like this dude who just like exudes like manliness.
Yeah.
Right? He's the guy who, you know, there's some video about him on YouTube, you know, where it's like he's the kind of guy like, if he gives you directions, you'll never get lost. If he sends a letter, it'll get there, even there's no postage. But it's like British people are like looking at someone like Putin and thinking like, man, why can't we have a leader like that?
Yeah.
Why do we have David Cameron?
Yeah.
Or why do we have like Theresa May? Why do we have these like weak, pathetic, you know, people? Why can't we have someone who just stands up for the country and just, you know, it doesn't mean he has to be a racist. It doesn't mean he has to be a fat. It's just someone who like says, listen, I'm Russian, I'm British, these are my people, I have to do what's best for my people. That's all. That's not too much to ask. And that's now moving towards, it's happening in France with Marine Le Pen. It could happen again in Holland with someone like Geert Wilders. It could happen, and it looks like it's going to happen now with Trump. Now, that might sound scary to some Muslims, but I think Muslims need to realize is that Muslims have been sort of caught up in this thing. I would say maybe inadvertently on their part, because Muslims, my conclusion, or my research into this is I think Muslims in the West, in Europe, in the Anglosphere, I think number one, the position is that I don't think you should be living there, right? You should be living in a Muslim country, much better off in a Muslim country. But you've been sort of played, because recently I published something on cultural Marxism, which I think is the best explanation of looking at the fact that Muslims are being used as a sort of a tool to bring down the sort of the Christian establishment of the West. They're being used, and then that's why you find a lot in the press where it's like it's okay to mock Christianity, it's okay to make fun of Christians, but woe to you if you say anything about Islam.
Yeah.
All right, that's not something that Muslims should be celebrating, because what if that situation changes one day?
Yeah. Right.
If you want to complain about cartoons, or you want to complain about Islamophobia, listen. Someday, very, very easily, the establishment could turn then on you and make you shut up about stuff. So don't celebrate that.
It just seems to me that's one thing I don't understand is why Muslims want to go to the West, because it just seems to me that the core values in Islam they're incompatible. Because Islam, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Islam isn't actually about freedom, or at least not in the same sense that America is, right? I mean, it's because it's a political, or there's a huge political element to it at least, and it's based on kind of, it's a theocracy, right? Yeah,
Islam is a religion, and it's a system of government, right? So again, and I mentioned this in my first podcast, it's like if you want to look at how Islam was established, where you go from the Meccan period to the Medinan period, and in the Meccan period, you have preaching the faith, and then you get like a group of maybe 500 people who actually become Muslim. Then they're persecuted by the idol worshippers in Mecca, and this is where like the term Dar al-Kufr, like abode of Kufr, where like people who are non-Muslim are ruling over you. And then it becomes Dar al-Harb, the abode of war, where those people then start persecuting you and making it impossible for you to function as a Muslim. And then the Muslims migrate, and they end up in Medina. And Medina becomes a Muslim becomes like Dar al-Islam. It's a Muslim state. It's a Muslim, governorate, you could say. And it's not necessarily conquered. It's actually done through preaching. It's done through invitation. And then that thing is set up, right? So now, for Muslims in the West, Muslims in America or in the Anglosphere, it's like if they wanted to set up some sort of like Dar al-Islam out in the West, it would have to be done in the same way, where you'd have to actually preach to people, you'd have to persuade people, you'd have to convince people, you'd have to do like really forthright, honest preaching, not watered down preaching. You need to be very, very forthright with people about what it is they're getting into, because you want to have, if people are going to convert to Islam, you want high quality, low maintenance. If you preach the faith and it's all like watered down and people aren't sure what they're getting into, you're going to get low quality, high maintenance converts, and it just doesn't, nothing flourishes.
Yeah.
But again, it's not. But again, my understanding of the way I've looked at it, and again, this is all I mentioned in my first podcast in greater detail, it's just in the West, it's just like a failure. It just has not. Nothing's been followed, and that's why the authorities, again, we go back to this, the authorities of Islam, the major theologians and jurists, drew the conclusion at least 15 years ago that, just don't live out there. We thought Islam was doing well over there. We thought it was spreading. It's not spreading. It's just, melting away and dissolving into, the American way of life, the British way of life. Just forget it. Just, if you really care about your faith, just come back home.
Yeah. Well, like, why do they move there? I'm just out of curiosity. I mean, is it because of the? Is it like money, wealth, or?
I think there's worldly benefits in it. I mean, you can get a higher standard of living, you can get a better job. I mean, I mentioned this. I have a blog post, called "Religion of Peace." It was a response to Ayaan Hirsi Ali, which I'll link below. But I know Muslims out there live over there. And one of them, I met one of them a few years ago, and he said to me, why don't you come out to Texas? That's where he's based. Like, why don't you come to Texas? And they said, you could be an imam and you could earn $100,000 a year, and we get you a house and a car. And I just thought, no, like, I don't want to live out there.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about my worldly life as much as I'm thinking about my afterlife. I'm not gonna live out there. No.
And you're from the UK, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you feel like life in the Middle East is better for you than
the Muslim world. Yeah, I mean, let's make this clear. My lineage. I mean, I can tell from my accent. I've lived in different places. I grew up in Canada. I've lived in Denmark. Now, my English lineage through my dad's side. My English lineage goes back like 1,000 years, right? Yeah. So I mean, I could easily sit there and claim, be like, yeah, I'm English. But I mean, no. I'm not gonna sit there as a minority in England and complain about the lack of Islam in England. I'm going to pack my bags and go to the Muslim world. I can't stand this whinging, this complaining. I mean, like I had some students once asking me about, they said, I think it was in Morocco, and they said, we've got people in Morocco who they complain about. These are like secular Moroccans, and they complain about the call to prayer, the adhan being made 5 times a day. They say it's allowed. And they complain about restaurants being closed and Ramadan. What should we do? What should we say to these people? And I said, well, tell them to move to France. Move to France, move to Spain. It's not that hard for Moroccans to move these places. I mean, if you can't be in like a 98% majority Muslim country and have big issues with Islam.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
if you don't like it, move. And
yeah, exactly.
I said to them, he said, I'm not going to sit there in England and complain about the lack of halal food and I can't find a mosque and I can't get time off on Friday and I don't get time off on Eid and wah. No, I'll pack my stuff and move.
That's like a lot of these American teachers that come out where I'm at, and I mean they just complain about everything, complain about all the prayer times, this and that. But it's like, what in the world are you doing out here? I mean,
no one putting guns to your head and drag you here.
If you're not a religious person, then Middle East is probably not the place for you. I mean, I don't. But obviously it's for the money. But
it works both ways. But I think I just think like it's about a sense of fairness. Like why do you want to impose your way of life on the majority of the people in the country you're in? I don't get it. It's like if you don't like the way the majority of people are doing things in an area, pack your stuff and leave. Just go somewhere else and just keep it peaceful. Because if you try, like this, what a lot of Muslims are doing now in the West, I don't like it, is when you try to play the political correct game, and then you try to impose Islam from above, and try to get nude pictures banned, or try to get page 3 of the Sun banned, or try to get cartoons banned, and try to have, you know, segregated swimming pools or whatever it is, or segregated. It's like these people aren't even Muslim. They don't even they don't know what that means. They don't understand what that means, and all you're going to do is you're going to make them bitter and resentful.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're going to say. They're like, wait a second, I'm not in Iran, I'm not in Egypt. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And they're going to say, rightfully so, listen, if you don't like the way things are in this country, go back to a Muslim country.
So what do you think Western countries should do, like especially America, you know, with the Syrian refugee thing? What is a fair, you know, policy?
Obviously, a fair policy would be you need to vet people. You need to vet people, but I would, you know, stop supporting ISIS.
Yeah.
Just back off out of the Middle East and let Muslims do stuff in their own countries and build up their own countries and have peace in their own countries, right? And make it easier make them play and allow those places to be stable, safe places where Muslims can go to and live, where Muslims can settle, where Muslims can be at peace.
You would say that America is indirectly supporting ISIS.
Yeah, well, this has come out in the WikiLeaks and stuff like that. They're aware of these things. I mean, there was something. I mean, it's just like within the past few weeks where there's supposed to be a ceasefire between the Russians and the Americans. There was a ceasefire, and then the Americans. Was it kind of Deir ez-Zor, I think, out in eastern Syria. They bombed like a Syrian military post, killed like 80 Syrian soldiers, and then ISIS moved in and took over the territory. And then the American government claimed that it was an accident, but then someone lower down in the chain of command said, no, we were planning that attack for weeks.
Wow.
All right. Then you have the other report that came out. I think Syrian girl put this out as well. Like where I think someone in the Damascus government came out and said we picked up a radio transmission between the United States and ISIS.
Really?
Yeah. Saying we're coming through, we're going to bomb an area, move out the way.
Wow.
So I mean, you look this stuff up. You know, in the parlance of the age, Google it. But
yeah.
So but there's always some sort of like nefarious underground, underhanded scheme going on in the Muslim world. There's just, you know, if you want to see some peace, just leave that stuff alone.
Yeah.
Leave that stuff alone.
On the topic of globalism and nationalism, so, you know, it seems like nowadays, you know, like Trump, because he's against illegal immigration, he's a xenophobe.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And then apparently, and even I've been reading a lot of posts by conservative evangelical leaders, and they're it's almost like being a nationalist is something that's evil nowadays. Like because I think that's what this election is really about.
It's a referendum.
It's about a globalist and a nationalist. And what's your view about that? Like in terms of nationalism? I mean, is that an evil thing? Or?
I mean, nationalism is not a bad thing in the sense that, because I said in my article, I said think about the difference between globalists and nationalists. And the globalists have an agenda, right? Their agenda is to set up some form of world or global governance, right? Which, as for Muslims, from a theological standpoint, that's scary, because that fits in with our prophecy about the Antichrist, what we call the Dajjal, having some sort of world government when he comes, right? So globalists should always be seen as the forerunners of the Dajjal. They're the forerunners of the Antichrist. These people are talking about global government, right? They're worshiping owls. They're doing funky stuff, right?
Yeah.
This isn't like Colin Powell's emails, man. It's just weird stuff. Be wary of it. Whereas a nationalist, and that's the point I made in my article, I said globalists are proactive. Nationalists are reactive, right? They don't have some creepy, funky agenda. So some people like Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a businessman, right?
Yeah.
Nigel Farage is a stockbroker. These people work in the private sector, right? They would have no interest whatsoever in politics were it not for the case of what the globalists are doing, right?
Yeah.
So these are people who, under different circumstances, would just be in the private sector, minding their own business, looking after their families, looking after their communities and whatnot, but then they're looking at the globalist agenda and thinking, oh man, I need to get involved now. I need to get my country out of the EU. I need to get my country out of NAFTA. I need to put all this stuff aside. And that's why, like, Nigel Farage, like, as soon as like the Brexit vote came in, he like wanted to quit.
Yeah.
And he's like, I've got my country back. Now I want my life back.
Yeah.
You know, exactly. I just want to get. I'm not interested in politics. And that's what I like about those kind of people. The kind of politicians who do not want to rule, do not want politics. It's not their natural habitat. They want to do something else. Oh, those are good people. Those are the people you want to rule. You don't want these career politicians. So I don't see nationalism as such a threat, because all these people they're just reactive. They just want to see, you know, their citizens looked after first. They want to see secure borders. They just want to live their lives.
Exactly. You know, and that's the thing. Like the globalists always say that that nationalism always leads to wars, but I really think it is actually the opposite. Like in America, I mean, when we first became a country, you know, we were nationalistic, but we were isolationists for a long time until like World War I, you know, World War II. Because nationalists, you're concerned about your own interests, but war is expensive. It wastes lives. I mean, it doesn't even serve your national interest. But it's globalists who are the warmongers, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, you look at what's going on in the Middle East. I mean, it's a globalist agenda. And you know, a lot of people. I think what's also irritating is, you know, people somehow Hitler is like a nationalist, which is ridiculous. I mean, Nazism was not nationalistic. It was a racist globalist.
It was nationalist socialist.
I mean, he had a global agenda, you know. And so he wasn't a pure nationalist at all, but you know, so there's all these connections.
But that's one of the differences. I mean, that's one of the major differences between the British and the Americans, because of what happened with World War II in Europe. People have used that excuse always, like you know, you can't be a nationalist because you're a nationalist. You know, you're like one breath away from a Holocaust. Just don't be a nationalist. So it's got to the point where if you think like British people will not. I know they're Europeans, but if we're talking about Anglosphere people, English-speaking peoples, like British people will be very like hesitant to say, you know, I'm proud to be British, I'm proud to be English, right? And that's why, like, my friend Abu Jafar, who was in my last podcast, like, he told me about in the UK, like, he met a woman from Oregon in the UK over the summer, and she just like walked around observing Britain, and she said, I don't understand, like, I'm proud to be an American. I don't understand these British people. Why did they?
Well, it seems like in America, and it's true even in I think in religious circles, it's like, you know, Trump comes out and says, you know, make America great again. That's his slogan, and that's almost like an evil thing now. Yeah, it's wrong to be great, or it's wrong to even strive to be great. Yeah, you know, I'm not sure what happened there or why that's the case, but
how is it a microaggression? No, I just don't see, like, if you look at the policies, if nationalism, if it's going to spill into, like, you know, my country is the best country on earth and no other country has the right to exist, or no other country has the right to challenge my country, or no other country is equal to my country, you know, on the world stage, then it causes problems, because this is one of the issues. This is one of the issues that Vladimir Putin has raised many times about the Americans, all right? And I think he has a valid point here about, I don't want to say the Americans, I would say the American government, is he has always said, why can't we just sit eye to eye and just discuss stuff and work and have common policies towards economics, common policies towards terrorism, common policies towards disease? Why does America always want, like, vassal states? Why does America always want to just dictate to other countries and not listen to what anyone else to do? So he says, like, so Putin said, it's like America they don't want allies and friends and partners, they want vassal states. Right. And it's like, we as Russia, we're not like that. Why can't we just see eye to eye? Yeah. Do you have an issue with that? What's the problem? That's why, like, I remember seeing that video last year where a guy was named John Simpson from the BBC. You know, he's a very arrogant man, and he addressed Putin at some conference and said, you know, are you stirring up Cold War tensions? Are you trying to threaten the West? And Putin just let him have it. I mean, very, very polite, but Putin was just like, just said, wait, hold on a second. How many military bases does the U.S. have abroad? It's like over 100. It's like, we have 2. they're neighboring countries, and we were invited to be there because of the threat of the Taliban. Yeah. And he said, how much money do you guys spend on your military budget? You spend, the Congress signed off on a budget of $550 billion. Our military budget per year is $50 billion. And he gave example after example after example. He says, so you think we're the aggressor? You think we're threatening people around the world? What are you doing? He's like, how do you have no sense? Yeah. And he said, I don't understand you Americans. I said, I don't understand why you people, and he's talking to a British man saying this, because he understands that Britain's a vassal state of America. And he's saying, like, why? I don't understand why you guys just can't see us eye to eye. You can't be on a level playing field with us. Why do we always have to be below you?
Right.
Why is that the case?
Yeah. That's the thing about the globalist agenda, is that, they always preach, peace and, we're all kind of equal and so forth, but it always ends up certain countries
Orwellian
do great, and
peace.
then other countries, just get, especially the Middle East. It's unbelievable what's happening, and that's been a globalist agenda. Not, we haven't had a nationalist president since Reagan, but
anyway. Britain hasn't really a nationalist and something like Thatcher. But again, I think it's not. Muslims, really, my advice to Muslims is don't get caught up in this political correctness and in this cultural Marxism and this victim mentality stuff, and start complaining and saying, oh, it's racist and they're going to hate Muslims and so forth. And not necessarily. This is simply about people, just British people or American people or wherever. They just want to see their country be prioritized by their leaders, and they want to see their citizens, their own citizens, prioritized by their leaders in the same way that the vast majority of rulers throughout the world are. That's how Putin is with Russia. That's how all leaders in the Arab world are. They put their citizens first. It's not a freaky notion.
In the Islam world, though, isn't like the goal in Islam to have another caliphate? Is that what everyone's striving for, or do they want this to separate countries like Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia? And so
no, the Muslim world again. There's an article on my blog. I'll put a link below called the Khilafah Issue. Right now, the whole point about the Khilafah or the Caliphate that is the prerogative of the foremost authorities in Islam. Right, is the prerogative of the foremost theologians and jurists, the authorities, and they issued a fatwa, like a collective fatwa, after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, and they said, yes, we should have a caliphate, but not now. We're just going to have to wait this out and see what happens and find the right time. So it's not the duty of every single layman or amongst the Muslim ummah to establish this, right? For Muslims, our responsibility as Muslims is to better ourselves. Our responsibility as Muslims is to establish. Don't forget establishing the Islamic State. Establish Islam within yourself. Live a righteous life. Establish that righteousness in your families, with your wife and your children. And then this Islamic State that everyone talks about, that would just be a natural outcome of that. Because again, there's a verse in the Quran where Allah says, this is Surah Al-Ra'd, the 13th chapter, verse 11, where He says, Allah does not change the state of the people until they change within themselves. You have to change your inner state.
Yeah.
Right. So don't talk about the outer state. Your heart has to be in a better state. Then you'll see changes. Then you'll see improvements.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about media spin. What do you think is the real, or what do you think that the narrative should be? The narrative that the at least mainstream liberal media is Trump's things that he says, his women, his whatever he's doing with these women and so forth. But what do you think the narrative should be?
The narrative should be. But you have a media that's like a globalist media. It's a media that's not actually telling the people, let's say the American people in this case, what they actually need to know. It's just wasting their time on completely mindless fluff. Because again, who cares about what Trump said behind closed doors? It doesn't matter what kind of rulers is he going to be, what kind of policies does he have, what is he going to do about the various issues that America is facing. That's what's relevant. That's what should be the narrative. This all it's is he a racist? Is he a sexist? Is he this? Is he this? And it's like, and it's just shocking. It's like, really, if you want to take this, if you want this presidency to be comparison of character, I mean, Trump's a choir boy compared to her.
Yeah.
I mean, her evil like just reeks to high heaven. But I'd say about the media, I mean, again, from a Muslim perspective, again, Muslims have organizations like CARE in the United States. There was an organization called MPAC, Muslim Public Affairs Committee in the United Kingdom, and Muslims in general. I mean, like when my experience of talking to them in the UK is, there's this constant like complaint about the media, right? Like the media always portrays us as radicals and terrorists and and extremists. The media this, the media that, and they take our words out of context, right?
Yeah.
And I myself have had run-ins with the media. There was a time back in 2005, 2006 where I was interviewed like a few times by like the New York Times, Le Figaro, usually about convert issues. Appeared on BBC Panorama, and I myself saw how they worked. Right? I saw myself how they they edit people's words and they take stuff out of context. Now, the conclusion I drew from that, which I thought would be the normal conclusion for any Muslim to draw from that, or any normal human being, would be, you can't trust these people. Yeah. Right? If they're going to lie about Muslims, why would you assume that they're going to tell the truth about Donald Trump, or about the EU, or about Hillary Clinton, or about any issue?
Yeah.
So I just don't trust them, right? Like the BBC, I'll trust the BBC with like sports scores because sports events have loads of witnesses. I'll trust them in that regard, but like other stuff, no. But the sad thing is, like Muslims still, they'll complain endlessly about the media, but they're still going to rely, they're going to believe CNN and BBC and the New York Times or the London Times or the Daily Telegraph or whatever, or the Guardian newspaper, when these guys talk about the EU, or when these guys talk about Donald Trump, or when these guys talk about Nigel Farage or Tommy Robinson. And I just think that's sheer, just, if not hypocrisy, it's just cognitive dissonance, right? Because if someone has been proven to you to be untrustworthy in one issue, then you need to be careful of them in every other issue.
Yeah.
It's just common sense.
So the polls have Trump, I think like Rasmussen has him down by 1. The LA Times has him, it's even. Do you think he's going to win?
Yeah, I think the only way Hillary Clinton can win is if there's some sort of fraud. Because the polls, what comes up again and again and again is that they're oversampling Democrats, or they'll put the undecideds in Hillary's favor. Right? Because they're trying to create this narrative of the fact that Hillary Clinton is like, she's the respectable, civilized candidate, and she's way ahead of this nationalist freako. Yeah. And it's not, it does not represent reality. I mean, there's a good video that people can watch. I saw it someone put it on Gab. It was a show called, a British show called I think it's called Hello Prime Minister. It's a comedy show, but there's actually a scene where the character playing the Prime Minister is talking to like his aide, and he's explaining how the point of a poll is not to gauge public opinion, but to influence public opinion, right? Mm-hmm. And he says, so you take any issue, and usually what they'll do is they'll ask you a series of maybe 5 or 6 questions before they get to the main question, and they'll ask you like 5 or 6 questions, and they'll get you to say yes, 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 yes. Yeah. And then say, okay, so if you agree to all those things, so obviously you're in favor of a military draft. Well, yeah. Okay. Right? And then they'll do that, and then when they actually publish the poll, they won't publish the first 5, 6 questions. They'll only publish that last question. Right? And then they can say, look, we've got a poll that says everyone favors military draft. And then they can put it the other way around. They can ask like 5, 6 questions. Do you think that people should be forced to fight against their will? Well, no. Do you think that the last thing, the 5, 6 questions? So you're against a draft, aren't you? Well, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And then they'll put that out. So they're doctored in that way. The third thing I would mention as well is the fact, and again, there's an article on Mike Cernovich's Danger in Play about this, and he put it out months ago, and he says, I never worry about polls because the issue here is simply enthusiasm, right? That Trump, everywhere he goes, he's filling out stadia, like 15,000 people, 20,000 people are coming to listen to him. There are 1,000 people outside the parking lot or wherever just to catch a glimpse or listen to him. Yeah. Hillary Clinton can't fill a school gymnasium, a high school gymnasium, like 100 people, 80 people, right? So there's no enthusiasm. There's no enthusiasm for it whatsoever. Cernovich also made a point about just like book sales, because she has like some. Her and Tim Kaine have some book called Stronger Together.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. So you didn't even know about these. See, like, and it costs like $4.99 on Kindle. Now, she mentioned that book. Now, put it this way. She mentioned that book in one of the debates, right? So she plugged that book to like 80 million people, right? Yeah. And the result is like nothing. That book is maybe selling like 15 copies a day or something. It's just like no one is interested in what Hillary Clinton has to say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Look at the book sales. Look at the numbers of people who go to her rallies. Nobody really cares. It's just a complete media hype. No one is actually buying what she's selling.
Yeah.
So I think Trump will win in a landslide, and I think he'll win in a landslide. And then even George Soros admitted it. I actually found some video a couple days ago. George Soros, right? Well, we really should refer to as not a philanthropist, but a misanthropist. Said, it's actually said like I think some sort of economic forum or something. But he said, oh yeah, Trump will win in a landslide. He said those words. He said Trump will win in a landslide, but you can pay the electoral college. All right.
Yeah.
So in that way, Hillary will be the president, even though Trump will win the popular vote in a landslide. So if things do work out and it's all fair and square, then he will absolutely be the president, because that's where all the momentum is. That's where all the enthusiasm is. And no one cares.
And there's a big difference between someone saying they support a candidate than them actually going out and voting.
Yeah.
So I mean, but the thing about Trump too is I mean all his supporters though, they would probably vote anyway. So.
Oh yeah, they'll crawl across ice to vote for him.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if like his, I mean, he does have big rallies, but does that really mean? I mean, those people always vote. So I mean, does it really mean that he's going to have, extra voters, or because it's different with Obama, because Obama had the bigger rallies, but he also like brought in more voters. I mean,
Trump brought in more voters. Remember, Trump won the Republican primary. He got more votes than any other Republican candidate in history. Right? He brought so many people out of the woodworks. People have never voted before. People have never been Republican before. He brought so many people out, and that will. And those people, again, it's just like the Brexit situation. There were so many people that are just going to vote for the first time. Because people thought that was a done deal, and the Remain campaign will win. It's like they got 17.5 million votes. That was like the largest electoral mandate in British history.
What were the polls like for Brexit? So because
again, they always had Remain like ahead. Remain was always ahead. Brexit was only like
by how much?
Always like about 3, 4, 5 points, maybe even more. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was always like ahead. And I think even the day of the vote, a poll came out in the morning saying that Brexit was ahead by like several points, and that put a lot of complacency. It rained in London. That might have put off like a few hipsters from going out and voting, but then they came out and it's like 17.5 million people voted, and there's like nothing, no person or policy has ever received 17.5 million votes.
Wow.
In UK history. No, Tony Blair never got that many votes. Margaret Thatcher never got that many votes. That was huge.
So what's like the aftermath of Brexit? Because I was listening to BBC, because unfortunately I can't get Fox News here in the Middle East. Surprise, but anyway, so they're all talking about how economically they're struggling and all. I mean, they're having all these problems now. But I mean, what is it really like?
They're trying to make it out to be like, it's the apocalypse because they left the EU. But what you're having here is that the EU is what Daniel Hannan always pointed out, that leaving the EU is not an event. It's not like a snap your fingers event. It's a process, right? Yeah. So obviously there's going to be this situation where Britain has to sort of like decouple from the EU. And go and remember, the EU want to make it as miserable and painful as possible, so that other countries get discouraged from doing so, right? Yeah. And they're even making some insistence that the negotiations have to be in French or something. But Daniel Hannan is fluent in French. If they put him forward, he'll take care of it. But obviously through that period of where the UK then has to decouple from the EU, which could take 2 to 3 years, and then after that sign its own trade deals with, say, the United States or Canada or Australia or India or China, these other like growing economies, especially out in the East, then things will pick up, right? These are just like growing pains, and that's all this is. This is just short. It's like short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yeah,
that's all it is. But obviously, the BBC and the EU and all these globalists, what they're really hoping is that like maybe we can make people think that, oh, it's just so horrible outside the EU, and they'll just beg to come back in. No, that's not going to happen. People can see through the fluff.
yeah.
But I'd say just one last thing though. But again, it's about the EU. That's the last point again about why I think Trump will win is this point of the way the left works. Again, the EU's leftist, the Labour Party in the UK, is that they always seek to shame people. Right? Is that they want to shame people into or conservatives or people on the right. They want to shame them into not expressing their opinions. Right? So people censor themselves. So what happened in 2015 in the United Kingdom, and Janet Daly and Daniel Hannan both had good articles after this, because the polls got it completely wrong. The polls thought it would be either a hung parliament, like a draw, or a Labour victory. But then Conservatives won comfortably. They got a majority in Parliament. They set up their own government. Is the fact that you had so many Conservative people who wanted to vote, but they did not tell the pollsters. They just told the pollsters, yeah, I'll vote Labour, or yeah, I don't know, I'm undecided.
Yeah.
And then when the day came, and then the privacy of the polling booth, they voted. They voted to leave. So they voted for the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party won, and the left was just like completely gobsmacked and shocked. But that was their own stupid fault, because they thought that the non-expression of those opinions means the non-existence of those opinions. That's not the same thing. And you're saying the same thing in America. I think the same thing happened in the United States. I think there's probably loads of people who are closet Trump supporters.
Oh, yeah.
Who have been shamed for the sake of their jobs or their careers or their marriages or their friendships or whatever it is, into not vocalizing that support. But then when the day comes, they'll just vote for him, and he will win by a landslide.
Yeah, it's actually true, because I know that actually it's kind of popular for conservatives to say, you're afraid to say you're Republican, or you're afraid to say you're conservative, because that's associated with, being an Islamophobe, homophobe, sexist, bigot, blah blah blah. Six terms. Yeah. So everyone. So it's popular to say, well, I'm independent. I think most people think of themselves as independent. Yeah. When they're actually, conservative. It's just like that in the religious world. Like it's popular. It's not popular to say anymore that I'm a Baptist or I'm a Presbyterian. Everybody's like, well, I'm an evangelical, or I'm a non-denominational church or whatever. It's kind of the same thing, because it has.
Or my religion's a personal matter.
Yeah,
something like that.
Something like that. So I think the same thing. No, but it's true. Even for me as a Trump supporter, I don't even really want to talk about it anymore, because, or at least you don't want to talk about it to an anti-Trumper. Because it's just
because you'll be cast as morally defective.
Yeah, they just it just becomes emotional.
Yeah,
anyway,
you're wasting your time talking to those kind of people.
Yeah.
So I think that's enough. We've talked a lot. I'll put these talking points up below, and along with further links. Marcus, thank you.
All right, thank you. Very interesting conversation.
Okay, well, I did there. Thank you very much.
I think.